Next Tuesday, very much all to play for a place in the final, of course, at stake. Frank Leboeuf with us, as is Jurgen Klinsmann. Jurgen, overall, Borussia Dortmund will be happy with their performance, obviously happy taking that lead to Paris, maybe disappointed that it wasn't a bigger deficit.
Well, I think, they can be happy. I think this is a great result going to Paris. It's not obviously over by any means. It was a very even game. I think Paris Saint-Germain had their chances. Mbappé hit the corner, the goal post, and Hakimi. They had chances on both sides. It could have ended 2-3 for Paris Saint-Germain or 3-2 for Borussia Dortmund. It's open. It's open to play next week. But we've seen a very, very good game from both sides. Quality all over the place. Was very good to watch. Was fun.
Maybe just quality lacking in front of goal for both sides overall.
The goal that he scored, Nicholas Füllkrug, was the most difficult of the chances that he had.
Yeah, that touch was brilliant, wasn't it?
The touch and the finish were excellent. The cutback from Jadon Sancho, all right, he had to take it on the volley, but this is the semi-final of the Champions League. As Ali said, he's leaning back. Then he had a header as well. He was a little unlucky with. He could easily had a hat-trick, but then, Paris Saint-Germain created the chances as well. We saw it on the clips there. They were also dangerous. But yeah, I think both will not be too disheartened. Great atmosphere of this stadium. If you did atmospheres, this is a place. Fantastic pictures with that yellow wall behind the goal. Jadon Sancho's performance. I think Adeyemi on Hakimi. I think both PSG fullbacks at times really struggled. And Dortmund, even though there was chances for PSG, they actually looked quite solid when they sat a little deeper. They sat in a good shape because they had that pace and the wider positions to hit on the counter-attack, which is not always their game, but they looked pretty solid defensively, which you don't normally talk about with Dortmund. At times, obviously PSG cut them open now and again. You're going to get that with quality players. But if I was Dortmund, I'd also be quite encouraged by the spaces and opportunities that particularly Hakimi and Mendes gave the wide players. That's encouraging from Dortmund for the second leg.
I think a lot of encouraging. We saw Arsenal retreat to their shell, didn't we, against Bayern Munich over the two legs. Borussia Dortmund could have done the same against PSG. They didn't. They went toe-to-toe and they got their reward for it.
I think Borussia Dortmund, while I agree that they'll be happy that they've won the game, I think they may be disappointed that indeed this wasn't by more than one goal, given the opportunities that were available to them. And yes, PSG had some chances, but there were some moments in which PSG turns the ball over in a really bad area, whether it's Vitinha or Fabian Ruiz or even Hakimi, turning the ball in a bad area. And now Dortmund are going, and it's 3v2, it's 4v3, and they just weren't able to find the right pass or the right connection. And even when they did create the clear opportunities, and I agree wholeheartedly with what was going on the outside, once Jadon Sancho figured out Nuno Mendes can't stop me, and he figured that out rather early in the game, I'm going after this guy. Because there's no chance he can stay with me. Defensively, Nuno Mendes, he is vulnerable. He can be exposed, and Jadon Sancho did that time and time again. As for Adeyemi, I would say, as much as it's impressive the work that he did offensively, defensively, the recovery runs on the outside, controlling with his speed, controlling then the involvement or lack thereof of Hakimi in the attack, because he was willing to track back on Hakimi, because he was willing to track back on Dembele as well, and controlling the outside, which then forces everything from PSG towards the inside. And here's my thing with PSG in the attack. It confuses me. It befuddles me. I don't understand why Kylian Mbappe, who's one of his main strengths is his speed, his dynamic movement over distance, in behind, keeps coming to the ball. I don't get it. I don't understand it. If you're a center back, if you're Mats Hummels and Nico Schlotterbeck, right? When are you most uncomfortable? When Kylian Mbappe is over there, 15 yards in front of you where you can see him, or when he's off your shoulder trying to get in behind? When he runs into the space of Emre Can or Marcel Sabitzer, when he can now be crowded out and he's dropping off as a playmaker, Kylian Mbappe for PSG should not be a playmaker. He should be a difference maker. And if he's going to be a difference maker, he's got to be running in behind and testing the mismatch of speed with Mats Hummels and Nico Schlotterbeck. That made it a whole lot easier for Borussia Dortmund to defend.
Thinking about I don't know, I can't remember if it was on the clip or not, the chance, and by the way, it was marvellous challenge from Marquinhos
Yes.
on the Julian Brandt one-on-one. And the only thing he did wrong, he took a touch. He could have, if he'd taken it first time, Marquinhos cannot make the challenge. Again, it was the Sancho ball for the diagonal run, and it got in behind them. But I think one of the things Dortmund, before we go to Frank, one of the things Dortmund did well, they did not allow the two centre-backs, who are not the quickest, certainly Mats Hummels, to be exposed. They did not allow them to be left with acres of space either in front of them or behind them. So actually, in terms of their defensive display today, for the most part, they were pretty solid, and that allowed them to get a little bit of base going forward.
Frank Leboeuf.
Yeah, I think I have an answer for Ali. I think Terzic worked very well his game, and he didn't allow to give spaces behind Dortmund defense, and worked on this on the depth that Kylian Mbappé couldn't get. And it's why he got frustrated and came back, and as Ali said, tried to be the playmaker where it's not his game. But what struck me the most for me is why Luis Enrique decided to put Dembélé in the middle, almost in the middle of the park, if he's not as a striker in the first half. We saw that he changed second half and put him, as we see now, on the right side. And he changed the game. So many chances that they had. He said that he has the most destabilizing player in the world at his disposal, but didn't use him at the right position. So I was very amazed and surprised by his decision. After that, I don't know, credit to Dortmund. I think a draw should have been fair, but Dortmund did very well with the fans that they had, the stadium behind them. They put the pressure at the beginning of the game. Paris Saint-Germain didn't exist. They tried to find something, and because of the change of positioning of Dembélé, I think it was much better for Paris Saint-Germain in the second half. They should have scored. Dembélé should have scored at least one goal. They had 7 clear chances. And maybe Jurgen and Ali can talk about that more than us. I'm talking about Craig and myself. But when you're strikers, you have easy chances to score. And as Craig mentioned, it's semi-final of the Champions League. It's not the game you have on Sunday morning with friends.
Jurgen, take us through that first goal, the only goal, and how impressive that touch is from Füllkrug.
This is a message from Füllkrug also, not only for his own Dortmund team, obviously for this Champions League moment, very special moments. Also a message to Julian Nagelsmann with the German national team. They're telling him, listen, I'm ready. I'm ready for the European Championship as well.
Yeah, show him that. Maybe not the misses bit. Hopefully Nagelsmann was in the bathroom for that bit. He would have seen that. Jurgen, what's it like to play in front of that yellow wall as an opposition? It must be incredible.
It is so much fun. I mean, this stadium rocks. I mean, it's the noise that they make, the support that Borussia Dortmund has throughout the decades is unbelievable, because the people, a similar bit to Liverpool in England, they just love their club. It means everything to them. And this yellow wall with 28,000 people, always full. Every Bundesliga game is sold out with 80,000 people. I mean, it gives them tremendous support, gives them energy, gives them confidence, and help them, I think, to win this game today 1-0, even if obviously PSG had their chances and it could have gone ended up a bit differently. But this crowd in Dortmund is exceptional.
What about Sancho?
Well, that's where I was going next. How do you explain it?
Well,
he was excellent today, yeah? I think we all agree that.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah.
A little patchy early on. Not his work rate, just his possession. First 20 minutes, and then after that he was absolutely terrific. Particularly in the second half. As Ali said, he had Mendes on toast. As soon as he got him one-on-one, little drop of the shoulder, step over past him. It's a hard one. Look, why is he playing like this? And I know everybody's going to be thinking the same question. Where was this guy at Manchester United? So now you have to look at environment, their team, which is clearly not as good as Dortmund, so the supporting cast is not as good. Man management, we know that's been certainly very public, the spat. And then you have to look at the player himself. He doesn't get away scot-free with, it was Erik Ten Hag, it was Manchester United, it was the midfield, it was all this. So I think there's been a little bit of everything in there. And there's no doubt the player did not want to back down, right? And United needed him. I mean, they could certainly do with a performance of a player like this, because they really don't have much, Garnacho aside. But I think it just has to be the environment of, he feels, and maybe just that's the way this young guy is. He feels, and I'm not saying it's right, because when you go to a club, they pay you wages, you should really be going out there and rolling your sleeves up, and if you have a spat with the manager, then at the end of the day, he's the boss. But it seems to me he is very happy at this club. He feels he's treated right at this club, and we're seeing that in some, not all of his performances, but certainly in these performances in the big game. And it's not as if we had a very small sample at Man United of 3 or 4 months.
No, exactly.
For a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
And we really, really did not see this with any consistency whatsoever.
And people say, oh yeah, but the Bundesliga is lower standard than the Premier League, blah, 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 whatever. This is Champions League semi-final.
No, that's nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it.
Go on, Frank, sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think I understand what's going on in his mind, and it's a mentality. We all play away from home. We all been foreign players, and we know that we take the place of a domestic player. Therefore, you have to prove 2 times or 3 times more than when you play in your domestic league. And when Jadon Sancho plays for Dortmund, he knows that he's an English guy playing in Germany, and he has to prove every day, week in, week out. And we've been there, Jurgen in Monaco, in Italy, in England, Ali in the States, Craig in England, and myself in England. We have to prove more than a domestic player. Therefore, the pressure is bigger, and therefore, you are more performant, I would say, and it's what is going on for Jadon Sancho.
The other thing that you can say, and it's not just specific to Jadon Sancho, is really across the board with Borussia Dortmund, you can ask that same question. How come we don't see this every weekend in Bundesliga competition? We don't have to go 2 weekends ago. We don't have to go a month ago. Just this past weekend.
Leipzig, yeah.
Against Leipzig. And they're trying to get into the top 4, and whether they're going to be in Champions League or not, and the coefficient and so on and so forth. But it was a matchup that you would think would get the attention of Borussia Dortmund, and they got destroyed. And when I say destroyed, I mean they got taken to pieces by Leipzig. And so maybe I'm too far into the Bundesliga forest to appreciate the nuances and the differences between what we see from this team in Champions League and what we see in Bundesliga. Maybe I'm jaded, because what I see from this team in Bundesliga every single weekend is nothing like this. And in fact, a friend of mine who's a fan of Borussia Dortmund reached out and said, this is the best performance of the season. And yes it is. I don't know where it comes from, but yes it is. And you see this team running with intensity and with energy. And we highlighted Adeyemi, but you can also say the same thing about Emre Can. You can also say the same thing about Sabitzer. You're seeing players that are elevating their performance in Champions League, and somehow they're unable to maintain it domestically. We don't see this, and we haven't seen it from Borussia Dortmund with any sort of consistency in Bundesliga. But in Champions League, a different team. Perhaps because the expectations in Champions League are not what they are in Bundesliga. In Bundesliga, they're expected to be at the top. And when they're not, it's disappointment. But now in Champions League, every time they play, it's like playing with house money. It's like, we're not supposed to be here, so we're just gonna give it a go and see what happens. And with that approach, they've been successful.
Jurgen, just going back to Jadon Sancho, what do you make of the whole situation?
Well, I love the kid, really. I mean, we talked about him a couple of months ago, and he struggled a bit coming back there from Man United, and it takes time. But then step by step, kind of, he felt, home again, home in Dortmund with his older teammates and the environment. He knows everybody, and then obviously he's trying to find his form. He's trying to find his fitness, which for his game is very, very crucial. He has his pace back. He's creative again. And then he's a difference maker. But as Alejandro said rightfully, the key is for these teams is always to find the continuity in their performances week in, week out with their domestic leagues. And Dortmund was not capable this year to play well in the Bundesliga overall. They struggled, and nobody expected that run from Bayer Leverkusen. That's a big surprise, certainly. But somehow they could focus on the Champions League in a different way and got their games out of the way, and now they have a chance. They have a chance to get into the final to Wembley. And I think Jadon is a good example for this kind of unbalance that the team shows over the entire season. So there might be a chance to play the Champions League final, but you finish off poorly for their standards, poorly in the Bundesliga.
You got two clubs struggling in England with two players loaned out. Maatsen from Chelsea, and they're, we know they have been bang average, and Jadon Sancho from Manchester United, which wasn't a surprise move because it was so toxic it seemed behind the scenes. But we know the managers watch every game. Ten Hag would have been watching that, sitting thinking, my God, what, have I done something wrong? Have I not managed it? Or was it irretrievable? Did he just not want to be here? He'll be sitting sort of banging his head in the wall thinking, why couldn't I manage to get this out of this player? But again, I say it, maybe it was partly down to, maybe it wasn't all Ten Hag's fault. Maybe it was partly down to the player himself. But you have to give him credit for that. That was an outstanding wide performance tonight from a pacey, tricky wide player.
And the thing is that Jadon Sancho would help Manchester United and Ten Hag be even more dynamic.
Yes.
Even more entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. Jurgen, how would you feel if you were Ten Hag at home watching this?
Yeah, as Craig said, I would feel a bit sad. I mean, I said, shit, I didn't get this kid going the way I should have, or it didn't perform the way we hoped to. But they are really, as Craig said, there could be thousands of reasons for that. Maybe the locker room is a completely different one. The place is a different one. Maybe he didn't feel so much at home in that moment, in his time of his career. Could be that he was 2-3 years too early at Manchester United. So he feels at home in Dortmund. Step by step, he finds his form again, and now shows us the performances that we are used to see from him. But it's very difficult for managers and coaches to analyze these performances of players, because behind the scene there's so many elements that don't work. Maybe the chemistry of the team, his best friends within the team, within the club, the spirit that is there, and there's so many little pieces that sometimes it doesn't work out your way.
Jurgen won the World Cup. He's allowed to swear, but you're not allowed to, Frank. Don't start. Let's look ahead, shall we, to the second half, the second leg. Frank, I imagine you're still confident the PSG will advance?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, because I think that overall there are more qualities than Dortmund. Dortmund, I think, is going to not park the bus, but defend well, back and deep, and they're going to wait for it. They are 1 goal ahead. They lead by 1 goal. So they're going to wait for Paris Saint-Germain. They're going to try maybe to get something out of it, like they scored the goal tonight. But overall, I think they're going to create. Mbappe is going to hopefully wake up, because we didn't see him today. And we're going to see a better Vitinha, because in the middle of the park also the guy is very important. He's been very important lately. I give big chances to Paris Saint-Germain. I think they are, for me, the favorites to win that second leg and go through.
Frank, we talked about the atmosphere, obviously, in Dortmund. It'll be slightly different in Paris, won't it? It'll be more of expectation.
Well, the pressure is going to be bigger, that's for sure, for the Paris Saint-Germain players. But it's one game to the final, so the fans going to be crazy as well. It's a great atmosphere at the Parc des Princes. Not the same as at the Westfalen Stadium, of course, but it's going to be big. It's going to be huge. It's a great moment for the players and for the fans, for the city of Paris, and for France overall to have another final. Marseille plays tomorrow. Can also go to a Europa League final. So it can be good for France. So everybody's going to be behind Paris Saint-Germain and Marseille, and fans can get very happy.
How would you chop it up percentage-wise, Frank?
65-35 for Paris Saint-Germain.
Jurgen, I imagine you're going 51-49, aren't you, to Dortmund?
Yeah, absolutely. Correct.
Yeah, there we go. But given what we saw in the first leg, there is every single chance that they can go to Paris and get it done, isn't there?
Well, I think, it's a totally open game. I mean, any team could have scored a couple more goals tonight. It was a very good game. It was fun to watch. But as Frank said rightfully so, we're waiting a little bit for Mbappe. We're waiting for Mbappe to show his real face. I mean, obviously, he almost scored a goal. He hit the post. But But there's more to come from Kylian Mbappé in the second leg. And this is something that obviously concerns Borussia Dortmund. They will play a lot more defensive in the second leg. They will not give him any space to run into. I think it played into their hands today that Mbappé mostly came through the middle, didn't find any space in the middle, against the center backs and the two defensive midfielders. I was surprised that they didn't move him out to the left side. Even when Kolo Muani came on, we thought that now he goes to the left side and starts to sprint the side up and down. But it will be a nail biter. But the difference maker, I think, will be Kylian Mbappé.
Jurgen, do you think the fact he's leaving at the end of the season makes any difference for him psychologically in these matches?
I could imagine so. Yes, I mean at his level, you want to leave. If you leave, obviously, to such a club like Real Madrid, if you're going to leave, you want to leave on a high note. You want to give your people something, and this is what they're waiting for. Since 10 years, they're waiting for in Paris for the Champions League title, and he's going to be very, very hungry. He will be highly motivated. 1-0 is a nice result for Borussia Dortmund, but he knows that he can turn that around.
I think there's a big pressure on him to answer that question, to leave with something tangible. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to win this competition.
But with a performance. Yeah.
But he has to at least show that he has dragged this team as far as possible. And let's be truthful about this. Forgetting Ligue 1, he hasn't really done it, particularly in the knockout stages of this competition. It was a bit better the second leg against Barcelona, but Ronald Araujo was off. It was 11 against 10. It was at home. They were more open. That's not a fair assessment. And again tonight, it was bits and pieces here and there. Yes, hit the frame of the goal. So I think the crowd will be waiting for something, and I think in his mind as well, he'll also be, and maybe that's to some extent a little bit detrimental, that he's maybe trying to do things that, I need to get out. I need to make sure I go out with a blast. I need to make sure I do this, I do that, and that might go against the ethics of what's best for the team. So it's a real balancing act here. But certainly we haven't, in the last 2 or 3 games in this competition, we certainly have not seen the best of them. If I was Borussia Dortmund, I think PSG for me are still slight favourites. I would be extremely confident of going there, as long as my shape was good, and waiting to pick your moment. A bit like I thought PSG would do in this game, but were not able to pick your moment on the counter with these pacey wide players.
But these are the moments, though. If you're Kylian Mbappé, this is what defines you as a player. This sort of moments. This is what defines you as one of the best players in the world. And I think we can all agree that he's one of the most dynamic and explosive players in the world. And you cannot go in the second leg of a semifinal Champions League quietly. That cannot be the case. So rotation, go find spaces out wide, be in the middle, come to the ball, get in behind, little diagonal movement, go to the right-hand side, go to the left. You cannot go out quietly. You cannot make it easy for Hummels and Schlotterbeck. You cannot make it easy for Borussia Dortmund. Appear in different places. Be off the shoulder, on the blind side of defenders, in between the inside shoulder of the outside back and the outside shoulder of the center back. You can't just stand 10, 15 yards away from the center backs and try to play make and resolve the issue from there. There's got to be more level of activity for Kylian Mbappé, and these are the moments that demand the very best from him.
The French supporters look at him like the fans of Barcelona and Real Madrid looked at Ronaldo and Messi. Mm-hmm. The 2 greatest players of the generation, head and shoulders, by far.
They both delivered.
And always, not always, but I would say a good 90% of the time, when their team was in the Sturm, were struggling, and it was the big time competition, one of those guys generally stood up for their team and was the difference maker. It's his time.
But it's certainly not a foregone conclusion if PSG are going to make it through to the final.